Mr. Zaborowski, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Sure, it's a pleasure.
So this is the culmination of a series of turbulent events, I would suggest, in Slovakia around the Prime Minister. Can you talk us through it and what you think might have led someone to take such an extreme reaction to what was going on politically there?
Well, I think we might be a little bit overdoing, like looking into some political or ideological motivation in the actions of a desperate man. I think it's the response really to what happened, why he took such desperate measure into his hands, are more in the sphere of psychology and perhaps psychiatrics, in fact. We know that the person who committed the attempted assassination, Mr. Cintula, is somehow disappointed poet who ended up as a security guard working in a shopping center. So this is highly a highlight of professional career for somebody who had clearly more ambitious goals in his life. So we also know that this is somebody who had extreme views, and these extreme views in the past were nationalistic, pro-Russian, and perhaps very much in line with the views of, in fact, the current governing coalition. But then he changed his mind and he became extreme in his criticism of the current government and of the sitting president. So I think that this is really not about ideology as such, but about the man disappointed in himself and with his life, and looking for response to his failures in the political system.
I wanted to ask about Robert Fico because, as you say, there has been a lot of focus on the perpetrator, but there's also been a lot of limelight on Robert Fico, his politics, and generally what has been happening politically in Slovakia. So there has been a lot of focus on how anti-Ukrainian Robert Fico was, but I wonder whether perhaps that too has been a little bit misinterpreted, and I wonder whether you could perhaps shed some light on that. So Robert Fico was anti-Ukrainian, that was the interpretation by the West, but I wonder whether you could explain to us what he actually meant by that, because he was against arming Ukraine, but was it really about the fact that he actually felt that that was not the solution to the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, that this was not the way to stop the invasion, the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Well, yes and no. I think, ideologically, Robert Fico is very much where Viktor Orban is of Hungary. Perhaps also with a twist that he comes from ex-communist party. He was communist in his youth. Then he served as a prime minister of the coalition, which is appealing to rather left-wing electorate. But left-wing in Slovakia is very different than left-wing in other countries, and I'm not quite sure that it's even appropriate to actually use the left-wing as a denomination here. But anyway, the point is here that Robert Fico was appealing throughout his career to a pro-Russian part of the Slovak electorate, which is very, very sizable. And that's a big, big difference between Slovakia and Poland. Never really in Slovakia, the views on Russia and Ukraine are simply different. The former government was pro-Western and pro-Ukrainian, and it was kind of convenient for Robert Fico when he was staging his political comeback, first as a critic of restrictions against COVID-19, then as a critic of liberal policies of the former government, such as towards, for example, sexual minorities, because even though supposedly as a left wing, he's also anti-LGBT. So it was kind of convenient for him to then switch into anti-Ukrainian rhetoric, which is genuine in his case because he, throughout his career, he's been closer to Moscow than to the West.
Yes, now, Mrs. Zaborowski, first Hungary, now Slovakia. A bit of a headache for the European Union, isn't it? The opportunity for them to act in unison is reduced. I mean, they're having a hard time already, but this has made it substantially worse, hasn't it?
Well, not quite really. I mean, Viktor Orban of Hungary is defined his political identity as a pro-Russian politician who, whenever it's possible, is trying to block aid towards Ukraine, but then he doesn't really block the aid to Ukraine. When we look into actual actions, he was making a lot of noise, but in reality accepted sanctions and such. And Robert Fico is a kind of even more moderate in this respect. Robert Fico is a politician who is targeting independent media in his country, like Viktor Orban, who is violating the rule of law, is engaged in corruption and so on. But when it comes to voting in Brussels on the issues of Ukraine related, he votes with the rest of the bloc, even when Viktor Orban is opposing it. You have to bear in mind that Slovakia is a much smaller country, the country of 5 million people who want to keep receiving aid from the EU, who want to keep receiving, the resources for modernization of the country, and they are being pragmatic in a sense that they basically make deals with anybody who can provide them with resources.
And just as a wrap up to our conversation, do you think that this event in Slovakia will affect the relationship of Slovakia with other immediate neighbors in the region?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we will see how the Czechs will react, because they kind of emotionally charged relationship is in particular with Czechia. They've been always comparing themselves to how Czechs are doing certain things, and they have a bit of a chip on their shoulder when it comes to that comparison. And at the moment we have very pro-Western government in Prague, and we have pro-Russian government in Bratislava. I think that there is a strong possibility for the current Slovak government to become more extreme with regard to issues of rule of law and crashing on NGOs and independent medias. And I think that the Czechs will be putting themselves in a position of defending these features of democracy in Slovakia. So they might have some impact, but not a
We seem to be having a technical issue there. I think we're going to have to leave it there, Mrs. Zaborowski. I don't know if you can hear us. Thank you very much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good day, sir.